I think it's just like time to move on, get someone young in who has a lot of flair, and just do something new at this point. Like, we have 4 years to grind before the next World Cup, and that should be our goal. Like, we shouldn't be looking for any now attention. Like, we've had not a bad but a sad result in the World Cup, and we just need to be looking for the next one. But I think we just need to have a big shift in our back line and grab some, whether it's new players coming up and through, or just finally, we've had so much switching around. We just need to find like the team that works, or start to develop youth in the Australian side. But I think it also just comes down to where the hell do we go next, because a new coach obviously coming in, which I don't think we know who that's going to be yet.
No, not yet.
With the amount of turmoil and stuff that's come out after Chica resigning and going off about the CEO, and therefore it's actually going to be really interesting who comes in to replace and what type of coach they're going to be for Australia.
Yeah, it is. Well, there's been a lot of reports come out, and the potential candidates are, Dave Reaney, who was coaching the Chiefs. I think he's over at Glasgow now. Eddie Jones, obviously, Aussie coach, who we've already had coach the Wallabies. And then there's also Jamie Joseph, who just finished coaching Japan. I don't know what's going on there, whether he's going to leave or resign. And then obviously Dan McKellar, and one that I actually hadn't heard of before, but Scott Wisemantel. Have no idea who he coaches. He's an England assistant. So, I mean, there's a few good options, but whatever happens, we need to look at, and I hate saying it, but we need to look at what New Zealand do and how they run. And you can tell that, and this is the thing that I think New Zealand obviously has the ability to afford this, but they have a certain amount of experience you have to be essentially before you even get considered for the head coaching role for the All Blacks. Because obviously Scott Robinson from the Crusaders has been spoken about, like he might take over after Steve Hansen leaves this year. But there's still that sort of, the NZRU doesn't want to appoint him because he's still pretty young in his coaching career.
Yep.
And I think that benefits them, because I don't know if Steve Hansen is going to go coach anywhere now. And if the New Zealand job is his last, that means that the whole time he's been coaching, that's all he's cared about. And what I feel like that's sort of created for New Zealand is Steve Hansen can lay out what he wants and then go to the clubs and happily say, this is what we're running for the All Blacks. Would you like to steal something? Because if this is his last job, he can do that because he's not going anywhere that he's going to get exposed.
Yep,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? And I think
or
that's
somewhere he has to compete against his own.
Exactly. And I think that's what the Wallabies need to do. Whether we bring in a coach who might leave and coach somewhere else, but we need to have, whoever we bring in needs to have top-down total control and influence over the clubs. I'm not saying that we have to force all the other clubs to play in a way, but you look at what it was between the skills difference between 2015 when we picked up Mick Breen in 2017 and he started doing exercises and coaching drills with the Super Rugby clubs, and how much the skill of the Super Rugby players has picked up and shown through in the Wallabies now. It needs to be the same approach with the coach. If the next coach comes in and he wants to run a tactical kicking game, we need to start training our players to look at that. Because you look at New Zealand, and like we've said before about the All Blacks, they play this sort of basic game that they build off of each week.
Yep.
And that's what we sort of need to establish in Australia. We need to establish what the identity of the Wallabies is going to be, show that to the Super Rugby clubs, and let them run away with whatever they want. And then you need a coach who's going to look at that and say, hey, let's bring in this element from here with these players. Let's not, like Checker has done, he sort of, we pick off form and try and either bash their players into the playing style or bash a playing style onto the players.
Yep.
And it just hasn't worked. And we need that top-down correlation, and we need all the Super Rugby clubs to agree and sort of work together, because ultimately, like you said, our target should be, and I'm happy for it to be, if we get a coach come in and say, our goal, like Jamie Joseph did in Japan, he went in and coached the Sunwolves in Super Rugby and obviously the Japan national side, and he said the whole time, my target is this World Cup.
Yep.
We have someone come in and say the next target is 2023, so let's build to that. I'm happy if the Super Rugby teams underperform a little bit, but it means when we get to the next World Cup, we're genuine contenders.
Yep.
Not going through because we're, the second best Tier 1 team in our pool, and then we go and get smashed in the quarters. I want the next World Cup, we need to, like you said, put in a youth movement, get in some new players. Like we have the Junior Wallabies They won the friggin' World Cup last year. They beat the All Blacks for the first time in ages. Like, we need to bring in youth and just trust them to build, because the target should be the next World Cup. That's what we need to win.
Agreed.
Like, Super Rugby success doesn't mean anything, because if the Reds or something win it, or, you know, go to the grand final and lose, it's not guaranteeing bum on seats. Rugby is dying in Australia. Like, people don't want to watch the professional when they can sit at home and watch the NRL, which is a lot more competitive. Like, we need to win a World Cup. That's what it's going to take to get rugby back on the map, and that's what the target should be.
Yep, that's completely fair. It's just, it's going to be that building of a new culture, whether it's both in the playing style and just, you know, the perspective of players and coaches. Like, there just needs to be a big shake-up, which is exactly what we're going to get with a new coach. It's just going to depend who that is and how they go about it.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that comes back to Australian culture too, is like how, I don't know, how we all want to succeed so badly that we don't sort of care about the others around us. And that's something that we need to put aside when we appoint the next coach. But, I mean, there's not too much else to say, really. It was a disappointing game. Whatever happens, we need to target that World Cup and work hard to it. But
yep, exactly.
I mean, 40-16, what can you say?
Yeah,
not many positives.
There's no positives to take away from it besides the usuals. And I think it's just, you know, we certainly move on from an upsetting World Cup, but we look to the next. And, you know, I think for me anyway, it's probably the most, even after such a lackluster World Cup, the most excited I've been for Wallabies, because we finally get a change.
Yeah.
And whether that takes 6 months to see or 12 months to see, like, it's just going to be exciting to see a fresh new Wallabies and see what the mentality comes from the players and just the style we play from now on. Because, like you said, we need to stop playing this football that's, you know, trying to match our opponents or playing off form. Like, we just need to, you know, obviously it's so easy to look at the All Blacks and think, oh, why can't we just do that?
Yeah.
But the way they play, it's like they play to their style, and if they lose, it's one, a surprise because they're so good, but two, they hit so much harder that next week because everything that went wrong, they've adjusted and improved. So we need to kind of take that mentality on of, we're going to have our culture, and, you know, that's the way we're going to play. We'll make slight adjustments when need be for our opponents, but we're going to stick to what we do, not just kind of see how the game's going on and then try and make adjustments at halftime, which has seemed to be the case